Hi, the business of today's tutorial is to teach you how to glue your prepared embroidery to backing paper. But before we get to the actual hands-on work, there are a couple things to discuss first. One is your choice of paper. These are both the recommended German Engrais paper, which I purchased from Hollanders, which is linked in the description below. However, it comes in two colors that are suitable for backing your embroidery. One is cream and the other is white. Now, neither of these are exactly what I would hope for in color in a backing paper. As a functional matter, they're completely fine. They back just fine. This is the back piece of the box, which has already been glued to the cream, and it worked just fine. There's nothing wrong with the paper from a functional measure, but the colors are kind of two extremes. This is very, very white. This is so cream, it's practically custard. I ended up choosing the cream because I had done two tests. This is cream, this is white, and in isolation, the cream looked a little richer to me. However, once I got my actual embroidery on it, I felt like the cream was removing some of the subtlety from the Russian tea cake, and I think I made the wrong call here. So if I were doing this over again, I would go for the white over the cream. However, it's your call. I am giving you both choices. This is, if I'm looking at the remote, a reasonably true color representation of both on video, so it should help you to make an informed decision. These are very subtle differences, honestly. It's just, I feel like when I see the Russian tea cake glued to the cream, especially with this red, I'm really seeing the backing paper more than the subtleties of the linen, and the white does a little bit better job of that. But you can't really go that far wrong. This is a very subtle detail in finishing. Don't get yourself too worked up. If you feel like you can't just decide, pick one, it'll be beautiful. The next thing is the question of practice in gluing. In my opinion, gluing your embroidery to backing paper is the most difficult part of an embroidered box. And that's not necessarily because it's technically difficult to apply glue to paper and put it on your embroidery. It's because it's nerve-wracking. The stakes are very high, and if you make a mistake and damage your embroidery, which I have done in the past, it's a terrible feeling. So my strong recommendation to you is to practice before you get to the point of your work for this box. And this can take many forms. No matter how much practice you want to do, a little or a lot, one thing you always need to do is do a test glue of the actual fabric you're using, in this case, the 37 count legacy linen Russian tea cake, your selected backing paper, whether you're using the cream or the white, and the actual glue that you're using, in this case, the acid-free Yes paste. This will allow you to observe how the glue behaves with this particular paper and this particular fabric. One thing about open weaves, and I did not find this to be a problem with the Russian tea cake because it's a reasonably dense, close weave and a high count, but if you glob the glue on too much, it could theoretically seep through the weave. So you need to get a feel before you attack your actual embroidery, just how much glue is right. I have tried to give you a sense here in the tutorials, but that's kind of the limitation of the camera. It doesn't pick up some of the subtleties in what I'm applying and how much. So again, this is something that you really have to get a feel for yourself with practice, whether that's just a few squares on linen or something more extensive. One thing I would really recommend, if you have abandoned starts that you'll know you'll never get back to, like Laura the serial starter, we've all seen her toss some of her old 32 count starts back behind the table, or if you used to stitch on Aida, but now you stitch on linen, you used to stitch on a lower count, of linen and now you stitch to a higher count, or there's some project that just doesn't move you anymore and you know in your heart you'll never get back to, put it to work for you. Buy some extra backing paper and try preparing it and gluing it to linen. Try preparing your embroidery, and gluing it to backing paper to give you some practice with gluing. Because although it's always kind of nerve-wracking to put glue on your hard work, it does become a lot easier with practice, kind of like just ripping off a band-aid. You know you have to do it, so you do it. You have seen me in past tutorials really just slap on the glue. I am not using the fast forward there. That is just practice at work. So I really urge you to practice as much as you can. And if you don't have abandoned starts that you'd like to use, you can use scrap linen, or you can even use scrap fabric, something like a brocade or a thicker, tightly woven fabric would be good because it would approximate the density of embroidered linen. Those are just a few thoughts for you to think about, and now we will get to the actual gluing of the lid to backing paper. This is my stretched lid piece, which I have let dry for the last 24 hours. I can see a pin came loose there. And now what I'm going to do is remove this interior row of pins very carefully without trying to disturb my neatly blocked linen, and leaving the outer row of pins here. I put a few extra in just to make sure that everything's secure here. And then this will give me more space in which to apply my backing paper and room to weight it as it dries. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove this entire interior row of pins, leaving only the outer row. I have now removed the inner row of pins and I only have the outer row of pins. I have pre-cut my backing paper here and I'm gonna lay it over just to make sure it fits neatly inside the pins, which it does. And you may notice that this is much larger than the actual design area. I like to have plenty of excess here so that you just have room to maneuver in finishing. I like to cut everything big and then cut down as necessary. It just, you never know what surprises you're going to run into when you're finishing a box, and it's just always better to have more than less. So I've cut a piece of paper here that's almost as large as my entire fabric piece, much larger than the design area, and that's what I'm going to glue down. But there's one more step to take, at least for me, before I can apply glue to the backing paper and apply that. And that's that I wasn't particularly neat with my ends here, and I've got some little bits of fluff hanging out, which I want to secure. If you started with pin stitch, or if you're just neater with your ends than I was, you can skip this, but this is just one little thing that I like to neaten up to ensure the cleanest finish possible. You don't want to have those little bits of red silky fluff showing on your nice finish. It's a small subtlety that just kind of helps elevate your finish. What I'm doing here is I'm taking a toothpick and rice paste, which I purchased on Amazon, and I'm just putting a little bit of the rice paste on my toothpick, and I'm using that to secure the red silk ends, either with my finger on some of these stubborn ones, which really don't want to lie flat, or with the toothpick. So I am going to go through and clean up anything that I find on here that needs to be secured on the back. I have finished securing any loose ends with rice paste. This is all looking really clean to me now. So I am going to get out my silicone mat and then start applying yes paste to the backing paper, which is the next step. Now I have my mat, the yes paste, and the backing paper piece that was already pre-cut for the lid, and I am going to apply the glue. I am sorry if the camera is shaking. I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing here. My mount came highly recommended and was supposed to be stable, and if my table shakes, I certainly haven't noticed it. So I'm not sure what's been going on with that, but hopefully you are getting a clear picture, and I'm trying to apply the glue a little more gently and less hastily so that you can see very clearly what I'm doing here. The glue does slightly darken the paper. It is also shiny, so just watch the light playing off the paper. If there are any areas that look matte or dry, that means you've missed it with glue. So just go back over it and just glob it on and then smooth it out with your spatula, making sure that you're getting full coverage and that your glue application is even across the entire piece. I am just doing a tutorial on the lid because the process is the same for all three pieces. I will give you a quick video clip of my setup on the long sides because that's kind of awkward, or at least it was awkward for me because I was working with such tight quarters in the sense that I had cut my strip of fabric much too narrow. Hopefully you have not made my mistakes and that'll be less painstaking for you. Anyways, I did take a video clip of applying the pinned down, applying the cut paper to the pinned out and blocked fabric, and I'll insert that on the end here. But basically all you need to know is that the process is the same for all three pieces, lid, back, and sides, even though the shapes are somewhat different. Block out your fabric, let it dry, cut your backing paper to a size larger than your design area so that you have plenty of ease to work with, and then apply yes paste neatly and evenly to your backing paper, and then once you're satisfied that your glue job is smooth and even, you will invert the backing paper onto the back of your embroidery while it's still pinned on the blocking board. Because you are going to manipulate your embroidery to apply it to the box. So for the lid, that means that you are going to fold down the sides onto the lid freezes. For the long side piece, you'll be folding them to the three sides of the box. And for the back, you'll be folding under the edges to conceal the raw edges that overlap on the sides. Again, there will be videos on all of that to make that clear. You don't just have to go by my little narration here while I'm gluing. But okay, where was I? Oh, so since you're going to be manipulating your glued embroidery heavily, I recommend a longer drying time for your glue-backed embroidery than for just the plain lining pieces. Give it at least 24 hours to dry under weights so that everything is really, really dry. The bond is very good, and that it can take the manipulation and the folding that you're going to be doing with your paper-backed embroidery in applying it to the box, which will be the next tutorial after this one. So I am almost done here. I'm sure you're sick of hearing me rambling, especially because I'm apparently losing my train of thought. And yeah. Another reason that I like to have a sheet of paper that is larger than the design area is that I have generally found that your glue application is a little less even and smooth right at the edges. So you're getting your best glue job here in the middle where it matters. This is now glued and ready to put on to the embroidery, which I will do in just a minute. So I have my paper, sorry, I'm really losing it today. I have my pinned embroidery on the blocking board out here, ready for my backing paper with the glue applied to go on it. So this is the glued side, which I am going to just carefully invert and lie down on this piece. I'm going to carefully but very gently smooth this all the way across, just to make sure that everything is lying flat. And then I am going to get a flour sack towel and some books to weight this. Okay, so I've got my flour sack towel, which I am going to just gently arrange here, trying to just drape it over the pins without disturbing them too much. Do you want to have your fabric taut while it's gluing? So I'm just smoothing that all out. And then I am going to set some heavy books on top of this and let it dry for 24 hours. That concludes our tutorial on gluing. I will add the clip on my work on the long side piece after this, so you can just get a glimpse of what I did there, and then you'll repeat the same process for the back as well, gluing all three sides and letting each dry at least 24 hours so that it's really dry and you've got a very good bond before you are cutting and applying your embroidery to the prepared box. There was something else I was going to say, and I am completely losing my train of thought. Give me a second. Okay, I have absolutely no idea. I'm having apparently just total brain blank right now. Anyways, I will insert the clip on the long sides after this. Make sure that every piece has adequate gluing time under weights. That's not something that you can rush. Make sure to leave ample time. Finishing is just a process that cannot be rushed. It has to be done in many steps and many stages. And at this point, once you're gluing, there is a whole lot of hurry up and wait. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. I am pretty sure that I'm forgetting something, so please check the description below. If I have indeed forgot something, I'll make sure it's included there. The little clip on the long sides will be put in after this, and then we will be back for the next tutorial, which will be on applying your embroidery to the box itself. So right now I am cutting the piece for the long three-sided panel, which is a slightly different cut from the others because this is too long for the sheet of engraved paper, which means we're going to have to cut diagonally to get the piece that you need for this. Now, I have placed this here. I've pre-drawn the line. As you can see, this area here is where I've cut out the piece for the back, and then I am going to work this way. Since there has to be paper on one side so that it can fold over onto the bottom of the box, there needs to be additional extension past the pattern piece. This just covers the side, so we're going to need to add on to this so that there is enough to fold over onto the bottom. So I've laid my pattern piece at my original line diagonally across the engraved paper, and now I'm adding a 1-inch extension at the bottom, going all the way across. As you can, wow, Let me move this. As you can see, this doesn't go all the way, but that's fine since these corners have to be mitered anyways. And then I'm also going to add a 3/4 inch extension on each side where the paper will fold over onto the back of the box. And again, you're not going to get a perfect rectangle out of this, but that's okay because you're going to have to miter these areas to fit them on the box anyways. And you know, sometimes you just have to make do with what you have, and this is the widest paper I could find, so that's what I'm using. So I've removed my pattern piece, and this is what I am going to cut out now using my X-Acto knife and my long metal ruler. So I'm going to start cutting. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this out on 4 sides. So this is my finished piece, which as you can see is not a perfect rectangle. It's a little awkward in a few of the corners, but you have one full unbroken line here, which is the top line of the design. This is where you need the full line. These parts on the side and on the bottom are where it's going to roll over on the box. They will be covered, so not having as much paper coverage here is not essential. And then now I am going to show you my pinned piece because pinning it on the blocking board is a little bit awkward. So even though the full tutorial here is on the lid, I'm just going to give you a peek at how I'm going to navigate getting the paper onto the pinned piece. So this is my blocked and pinned side piece on my blocking board. It is face down, and then I have gone through and cleaned up any loose ends. I have used rice paste to glue down anything that was outside a motif, and it's ready for the paper to be glued and go on. So the way I'm going to, also important to note, the sides here, which, let's see if you can see that. I have pinned them sideways into the edge of the blocking board, so I have as much space as possible on the sides here, because the blocking board, as long as it is a little bit short for this piece, but you don't want to pin this diagonally as you did in cutting out the paper, because you need the correct orientation of the grid when you're blocking and pinning this thing. So what I'll do is I will apply the glue, and then I'm going to set this on like this with the clean edge here at the top and with the to be mitered partial corners at the bottom where it's going to roll onto the bottom of the box. So I'm going to go ahead and glue and weight that and let it dry.